The expanded university, imaginative and boundless. References are brought to you by our personal collection of books, the Cardass Library.
Viceroy, I don't want this stunted slime in my sight again.
Where are you taking this thing?
Bounty hunters. We don't need that scum.
Sir, we have a priority signal from the Star Destroyer Avenger.
And you call yourselves humans?
Racism, bigotry, prejudice. Call it what you want, but it has been around for millennia. Although in the modernized portions of the world we've largely eliminated it, it still admittedly serves us well to tell stories that are in part cautionary tales of what happens when people in large groups are swept up in hate movements. What doesn't serve us well is when such stories are contrived or fallacious in nature, as such stories take away from problems, either current or past. Right out of the gate, Star Wars chose to make a pretty clear statement on the militaristic nature of the villains and the designs of the costumes, not to mention in whom they hired to portray such villains. The imagery was effective on both counts, the costumes being creative enough to be part of an unknown universe, but also being reminiscent of real-world oppressors, and the ranks of the Imperial forces had a noticeable consistency that didn't require ambitious lines of dialogue to point out. Good storytellers show and do not tell. While the films were more subtle in their portrayal of bigotry on the part of the Galactic Empire, the expanded universe was able to go into more detail. Indeed, we learn in the material that the Empire carried out state-sponsored persecution against many alien species, up to and including slavery. Movements that start out as populist, like the Empire, often demonize certain groups as a means of creating unity for a common cause. In this video, we're going to identify when in the EU creators began to both subtly and overtly depict the Empire as a racist government. First, we're going to go all the way back to 1978 in Splinter of the Mind's Eye by Alan Dean Foster. Let's read. Luke's surprise was genuine. You mean, those pitiful wretches who beg for drinks? Unexpectedly, the man laughed. Good. You've got a sense of humor. You'll need it. Greenies, building this? You must spend all your time in the mines. Not me. The trooper swelled with self-importance. I'm always trying to improve myself. As you know, he began, there are several semi-intelligent races on this world, besides the Greenies. Some are more degenerate than the others. Elsewhere in the novel, Luke and Leia had the following exchange. The big miner met this pitiful request by putting out a broad foot and kicking the native in the face. Luke winced and looked away. The princess glanced at him. What's wrong, Luke? I can't stand to see anything abused like that, he muttered. Human or animal or alien. He faced her curiously. How can you watch it? I saw my whole world, several million people destroyed, she responded with chilling matter-of-factness. Nothing mankind does surprises me anymore, except that anyone could still be surprised by it. Not solid evidence, but suggestive enough to conclude that some people, stormtroopers included, had a low opinion of non-humans. In the Marvel Comics series, slavery was depicted as being licensed, as shown here in this line from bounty hunter Valance. In issue 91, Chewbacca's brother-in-law Vargi was revealed to be a collaborator in slavery against his own people. He was in league with a near-human Nagai, whom Han accused of working with the Empire, further cementing the Empire's involvement in slavery. We've revealed in previous videos that West End Games was instrumental in fleshing out the Star Wars universe. In 1987, they revealed that Akbar had been the personal slave of none other than Grand Moff Tarkin. More on him later. West End affirmed the enslavement of Wookiees by the Empire and showed other enslaved species, such as the Flakax. But that is slavery, and the Empire could have enslaved humans as well. West End would take it a step further and call out the Empire as racist. In 1990's Rebel Alliance sourcebook, the formal Declaration of Rebellion was revealed. You have instituted a policy of blatant racism and genocide against the non-human peoples of the galaxy. They had done it. They had added a reason to make the Empire even more despicable. Interestingly, the Imperial sourcebook states the following. All sapient inhabitants of the Empire, except droids, are considered full citizens. Full citizens are accorded certain rights under Imperial law, namely, the right to follow the precepts of the New Order fully and without question. Of course, how the Empire chooses to define sapient is the key. As well, governments like the Empire have laws in the books, and then they have the practices they follow. Within novels, the groundbreaking Heir to the Empire trilogy would make the Empire's bigotry official. Let's read from the first book from 1991. Pelion returned the other's gaze without flinching, feeling a small flicker of pride at the achievement. Many of the Emperor's top commanders and courtiers had never learned to feel comfortable with those eyes, or with Thrawn himself for that matter, which was probably why the Grand Admiral had spent so much of his career out in the unknown regions, working to bring those still barbaric sections of the galaxy under Imperial control. His brilliant successes had won him the title of Warlord and the right to wear the white uniform of Grand Admiral, the only non-human ever granted that honor by the Emperor. And the next year, in 1992's Dark Force Rising. I saw him myself, Han repeated. Describe him, Phalia said. What did he look like? He wasn't human, Han said, at least not completely. He had a roughly human build, but he had light blue skin, a kind of bluish-black hair, and eyes that glowed red. I don't know what species he was. Yet we know that the Emperor didn't like non-humans, Mon Mothma reminded him. Thrawn, although a person who attained the highest possible military rank in the Empire, may be one of the best cases for showing Imperial bigotry. In the making of Baron Fel, the treatment of Thrawn is shown. As Fel narrates, the Empire justified its actions through human superiority. It was our duty to preserve order and prevent the exploitation of lesser species. Any action in the pursuit of that goal was justified. Relying on the alien to save the Empire, the Emperor undercut the foundation for belief in the Empire. Referring to Thrawn, but the alien, he got nothing. Rumors later placed him in the unknown regions, an embarrassment, clearly, that the Emperor wanted hidden far away from Imperial Center. Given the Empire's xenophobia, only one thing could explain the presence, nay, even the existence of the alien admiral. It's his plan. He set this up. An alien will save the Empire. I don't know what scared me more, that realization or the alien's knowing nod. Which leads us to the question, was Palpatine himself an anti-alien bigot? Despite the questionable evidence in the scene we saw early in this video, other evidence is to the contrary. Palpatine's Sith Master was immune. He chose Darth Maul to be his apprentice. He had Mas Amedda and Sly Moore as close confidants. Mas Amedda was in a key position. This passage is from Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. The tall-horned Chagrian, now the Emperor's interface with sundry utterly dispensable senatorial groups, moved cautiously between the Imperial guards who flanked the door, inclining his head in a bow of respect as he approached Sidious. Later in the timeline, Prince Shizor of Black Sun would almost become a rival of Darth Vader for the Emperor's favor. Part of Palpatine's reasoning was explained in Shadows of the Empire sourcebook. That book reads, his newest tool is Prince Shizor. Granted, the leader of Black Sun is an alien, but Palpatine has used aliens for his own purposes before, the enigmatic Thrawn and the fiercely loyal Nogri being but two examples. So was Palpatine simply using anti-alien sentiment and policy to control his human base? Let's read an excerpt from Book of Sith. The Republic's alien species are the simplest targets. Most humans of the core already despise looking into their multiple eyes, or listening to their clicking, buzzing languages. They hate their bewildering customs and their sharp stench. Coruscant is a seething boil of species, but humans far outnumber any other species. It is an ideal place to sow seeds of suspicion, to instill the idea that those who don't conform are the enemy, and enemies must be destroyed. By making the powerless a target, the people will not threaten the one in power. On the contrary, the ruler will be venerated as a hero for exposing the weak. Note that the preceding beings, save for Plagueis, were near human. Let's look at some of the dialogue between a younger Palpatine and the titular character in the novel, Darth Plagueis. Palpatine pointed to the distant tree line. There are some ancient ruins in there, but that's Gungan territory. Have you had any dealings with them? Personally, no, but I've seen the ones that come to Nemoenia to trade for goods. What are your thoughts about them? Aside from the fact that they're long-eared, slimy-tongued primitives? Aside from that, yes. Palpatine shrugged. I don't mind them, so long as they keep to their submerged cities and waterways. Not get in the way. Exactly. Humans deserve to have the upper hand here. Later in the novel, Plagueis asserts that humans have an upper hand. No, Plagueis said firmly. It must be you. You have the political skills, and more to the point, you are a human. In this era, only a human is capable of rising to the top of Coruscant's biased political heap. Human or not, my knowledge of the dark side will never equal yours. The title, the crown, should be yours. It seems that Palpatine might have had some human supremacist thoughts early in life, but given his track record on working with non-humans, the Empire's policies of discrimination appear to be yet another instrument from his master manipulator's tool cabinet. Compnor rallies employed rhetoric that included human unity and supremacy. It probably helped that the Separatists were largely made up of non-human organizations. Images such as this one of captured Neimoidian holdouts could be used to great effect in propaganda. Back in real life, the EU would use the idea of imperial bigotry more and more, such as in the X-Wing series of novels, where Yesenia Sard, Imperial Intelligence Director and effectively the Empress after Endor, ordered creation of a virus that would only hurt aliens, thus sowing the seeds of discontent in the New Republic. 2000's Rogue Planet would reveal Tarkin's racism. I do small favors for certain people, Tarkin said. I once balanced these favors between opposing sides. Lately, my efforts have become a bit more lopsided. Balance is no longer necessary. Sinar stood before his old friend and listened intently. His tall, cleanly muscled body seemed to reject repose. Some of these people have an appreciation for fingers. Not tentacles, my friend, not palps, but human fingers, reaching into a great many Stella soup bowls, testing the temperature to see if they are ready for the eating. Why the concern that they be human? Humans are the future, Wraith. Some of my best designers are not even remotely human. Yes, and we employ non-humans wherever they are useful, for now. But mark my words, Wraith, humans are the future. Wraith noted the tension in Tarkin's voice. So marked. Elsewhere in the book, Tarkin had this exchange with Anakin Skywalker. His name was Kadive, Anakin said. I killed him after he threatened Jabitha. I see, a clumsy misunderstanding of our orders. Well, you can never trust his kind, can you? I prefer dealing with humans, don't you? Anakin did not answer. A few instances of retaliatory discrimination and racism were portrayed in the EU. In Wedge's Gamble, the alien Combine on Coruscant was an anti-human group that gave Rogue Squadron trouble. Not at all, but his relief shows him to be as much a bigot as the stormtroopers who just left here. Asir tapped Gavin's ID card with the muzzle of her blaster. If he'd not lied, if he'd accepted my invitation, we'd have known he's like your woman, someone to whom species makes no difference. Since he's a bigot, we have other uses for him. And those would be? The Bothan smiled coolly. The imps have been kidnapping people from Invisec, and they've not returned them. Something has to be done, so we have formed the Alien Combine. We need someone to take a message to the imps to let them know we'll tolerate their predation no longer. Your friend has elected himself to fill that post, and this will be one time when a dead man will tell a tale. In 1997, a storyline began in the Young Jedi Knight series of novels where an organization called the Diversity Alliance publicly presented itself as a pro-aliens movement while actually being anti-human terrorists with plans to release a plague that only killed humans. Let's read from the essential chronology. Vicious and skillful, Nola had succeeded in becoming the first female leader of her species. She gave many charismatic and enthusiastic rallies, whipping up support for her all-alien alliance, whose ultimate goal was to punish humans for the horrors of the Empire and past excesses. The idea of in-universe whitewashing, a term used by social justice warriors, was shown in the Essential Atlas. A human opera singer was cast in the role of a member of the Duro species, a role that was traditionally played by Duros. Compnor's Coalition for Progress had the following to say about the media backlash at the casting. Much has been made by irresponsible media outlets of the decision that Banu Haidia's role, traditionally sung by a Duros double bass vocalist, will be sung by Chandrala's Amaro Fantine. Neither the Brental Council on High Human Culture nor the Brental Hall Conservatory countenance the narrow-minded idea that a Duros role cannot be voiced by a human. The Council and Conservatory also reject out of hand the idea that certain arias in the cycle should be considered somehow offensive in their portrayals of non-humans and their philosophies. I guess this would be a case of greenface? 15 years after the Battle of Endor, the Imperial Remnant and the New Republic made official peace, culminating in a handshake between Pelion and New Republic President Gaversum, a non-humanoid alien. Over 100 years later, aliens served in the Fel Empire, such as these, a Yankori, a Kalish, and a Deveronian. We've established that the Galactic Empire was a government that unquestionably implemented not only state-sponsored persecution of certain alien species, but also institutionalized racism. Both were tools of control over the targets of such practices and over the true believer supporters of the ideology. There were also criminal, terrorist, and shadow government organizations that advocated for and carried out wholesale murder on the basis of their target species. It's important that impartial scrutiny be applied to all forms of bigotry. Doing so requires true courage and displays of rebellion from individuals brave enough to engage in dissent from popular trends.